last night, we heard, and I personally heard actually sounds related to the activation of the air defense system in the Iranian capital, as well as the active presence of drones across the skies of the Iranian capital. Meanwhile, we've got reports of explosion from different cities beyond the capital, from, I can say, an industrial complex in southern parts of the capital, as well as Isfahan, Kashan, Ahvaz, and Saqqez. These are the cities that we have footages and reports coming about the explosions taking place, and we have to also keep in mind that it's more than 200 cities from the initiation of these confrontations being targeted in different parts of the Iranian territories. This is one point. And then there is another concerning point, which is related to the death toll. We know that more than 1,300 people have been killed. Even though, seeing the continuous nature of these strikes, we can unfortunately say that there is a risk potentiality for the number to grow even up. So they are dealing with a tough situation for ordinary citizens, as this is not just the police stations, the military headquarters or state buildings, but also residential areas such as the schools and hospitals being targeted. On the other hand, we've got the Iranian army side, the IRGC in particular, talking about their retaliatory actions. And now the situation seems to be anywhere close to de-escalation, as they talked about the 40th wave of their retaliatory strikes. And meanwhile, we've got a security official in Iran who told Al Jazeera last night that the regional war will soon enter a new phase. He continued to say that if the United States makes such mistakes as initiating the strike on Iran, the situation could become much more complicated. And again, another important line that he mentioned is, speaking of one of the strategically important choke points in the region, Strait of Hormuz. He said that another key strait will face the same fate as the Strait of Hormuz. So it seems that regionally speaking, Iranians are trying to rebalance, to reshape their behavior as the escalations ramp up to next levels.
All right, that's Tauhid Asadi live for us from Tehran. Tauhid, thanks so much for all that. Let's turn now to Zaina Khudr, who's live for us in Beirut. Zaina, we know that Beirut's been coming under an increasing number of attacks by Israel, and there was that strike on Ramat al-Bayda where you are, and which is a popular beachfront district. Could you just bring us up to speed with all the latest developments on that?
Well, there's been a marked escalation in this conflict. We are in Ramat al-Bayda, like you mentioned, a seaside boulevard in the heart of Beirut. The car behind me targeted in the early hours of the morning by an apparent Israeli drone strike. When people gathered around the car, another strike came in, a double tap strike. People here are sleeping in their cars, in their tents. They are people displaced by the ongoing conflict. It wasn't just the only attack. Beirut's southern suburbs came under intense bombardment. There were strikes in the south of the country, in the east of the country. The death toll is climbing. What is clear is that we have entered a new phase in this conflict. Last night, the Israeli military really promising an extensive wave of attacks, which it did carry out, following Hezbollah's largest rocket barrage since the start of this latest confrontation. According to Israeli media reports, Hezbollah fired 100 rockets across the border at the same time. And it wasn't just Hezbollah firing, it was in coordination with Iran. And a statement by Iran's Revolutionary Guards calling this a joint and integrated operation. These rocket launches with Hezbollah really, marks an escalation in this conflict, a new phase in this conflict. We knew from the start Hezbollah opened the front in retaliation for the killing of the late Iranian supreme leader, but now it's really official that it is the same front. This is not a separate theater of military operations, but one front. With yesterday Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem issuing a statement pledging allegiance to the new supreme leader.
Zaina, I just want to talk for a moment about the fact that, of course, it's not just Beirut that's being affected right now. Other parts of Lebanon have come under heavy bombardment by Israel, and hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced as a result of all this. You were speaking just a moment ago about the people that were displaced as a result of this latest strike on Ramat al-Bayda. The rest of the people, all these people that have been displaced, where are they going, and what's being done to help them?
Nearly 1 million people displaced by this conflict.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm gonna start it.
That many people entered into in 1991 and 92.
Mr. Bolton, thank you very much. That was John Bolton, former U.S. National Security Advisor during the first Trump administration. One person who could benefit from the Iran war, at least over the short term, is Russian President Vladimir Putin. High energy prices are good news for Russia's economy. It stands to profit from oil sales, especially since the U.S. has relaxed sanctions on its oil exports. But Russia is also one of the few countries that have maintained close ties with Iran, receiving military support for its war in Ukraine. Depending on the outcome of the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran, Moscow could end up losing another key ally in the Middle East. Well, for more on this, we can speak now with Ivana Stradner. She's a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Russia program and joins us from Washington. Ivana, what can you tell us?
نجتمع اليوم والمنطقة تمر في ظروف عصيبة.
We meet today as our region has affected the region and has also targeted the state of Qatar, regrettably, with repeated attacks from Iran, which have not been limited to military targets alone, but have also struck civilian targets, showing little regard for the harm inflicted upon Qatar and the resources of its people.
In practical views, he's offering to mediate this conflict. But I also have to provide another side of the story that Putin is also not happy with what's happening in Iran because Russia and Iran are strategic partners.
Indeed, they have this strategic partnership, but there were reports that Tehran was disappointed by that Russia is giving Iran more assistance this time around?
So with friends like Putin, Russia's allies do not need enemies. They're all walking on thin ice because this is not only about Iran that you mentioned in 2025. Russia also threw Armenia under the bus with its war against Azerbaijan. Putin also was very silent on Syria and indeed very much silent on Venezuela. So whoever believes that Russia is going to send tanks and jets to Iran is sorely mistaken. But here is a catch. Russia is still able to provide Iran with intelligence and other support. So that's also something that we should not exclude in terms of relations. Of course, Russia is justifying this, claiming that they do not have any obligation to help Iran.
Law and the principles of good neighborliness.
Before the meeting, Qatar's ambassador said Iran's attacks are illegal.
Let us be clear. These attacks by the Islamic Republic of Iran have targeted our sovereign territory, endangered civilian populations, and caused damage to civilian infrastructure in the state of Qatar. These actions are a clear violation of international law and the UN Charter.
135 countries co-sponsored the resolution. That is the most co-sponsors of any Security Council resolution ever. The level of support is unprecedented.
Text which was pushed by Israeli regime charter and committed act of aggression.
Russia and China agree with Iran, but abstained rather than using their veto power.
This meeting is adjourned.
The world has now spoken. The big question now is, will Tehran listen? Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, the United Nations in New York.
U.S. President Donald Trump has urged oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz as Iran tightens its chokehold on the crucial maritime route. Trump promised safe passage for the vessels, but did not provide details. The U.S. president also said the operation against Iran is not over yet. Iran says it's ready for a long war of attrition that would destroy the world economy.
We took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. We're up to boat number 60. I didn't realize that big a Navy. I would say it was big and ineffective. But every one of their ships, just about all of their Navy is gone at the bottom of the sea. We don't think so.
Jason Campbell is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute and former civilian Pentagon official. He says Trump's latest messaging about the war in Iran is still very vague.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. He's speaking in broad platitudes that we're really hitting them like never before and that we need to finish the mission. It's a very mixed message because on the one hand, yes, the United States is continuing to conduct airstrikes over Iran and dealing with a number of other threats. But I what he means by finish the job, because if that includes a regime change, I think it's going to be very difficult to achieve here without a significant escalation of U.S. effort and would go against his little excursion phrase that he keeps referring this to by. Well, I think both in rhetoric and action, things do appear to be escalatory on both sides. Now, in terms of what the conditions that Iran is putting forward are to Russia and Pakistan, that remains to be seen. And it's somewhat encouraging to hear that there's at least mention of this, which we have not heard over the last few days. The big question becomes, what is the U.S. reaction going to be to it? And what kind of agreement might they be willing to live with, given the more of the maximalist stances the U.S. has taken when it comes to the nuclear program, the ballistic missiles, proxies, and other things.
All right, let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. 4 people have been killed in Ukraine in the latest exchange of drone fire with Russia. 2 died and several were wounded in the eastern city of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second. After a surge in attacks by Israeli settlers. They say the violence has intensified since Israel and the U.S. launched a joint offensive against Iran. Hamza Mohammed reports.
Grief fills the home of Malak Berat. Her husband, Thair Hamail, was killed by Israeli settlers. Now she clings to his clothes, searching for traces of the life they shared. Witnesses say Thair was trying to protect his neighbors in Khirbit Abu Falah, north of Ramallah.
The young men and the people gathered to protect the area. There was a huge number of settlers. At the beginning, it was stone throwing. Then the settlers started to shoot towards the residents. I was with them at a site away from the settlers. They shot towards us, and unfortunately, the bullet hit his head, killing him.
Since the U.S.-Israeli offensive against threats, Palestinians say they feel increasingly alone and unprotected. Hamza Mohammed, Al Jazeera.
Inside Russia, the regime change is possible. And I want to
An emergency.
It's an image few would have imagined even a year ago. José Antonio Cast, the son of German immigrants, receiving Chile's presidential sash. It signals the sharpest political shift to the far right since the country's military coup in 1973.
To confront our emergencies in security, in healthcare, in education, employment, and so much more, Chile needs an emergency government. And that's what we'll have. An emergency government isn't a slogan, it's a reality. It means order where there's chaos, and a firm hand where there's impunity.
Outgoing left-wing President Gabriel Boric put on a brave face at the inauguration. Almost all the conservative leaders of the region were in attendance. Strong supporter of Chile's former dictator, General Augusto Pinochet, inspired by Donald Trump and his MAGA movement, has pledged to make Chile great again. He supports conservative social values and even broader free market economic policies. His electoral promises to reduce crime is already in the making. On Saturday, Cast attended a summit of like-minded regional leaders hosted
One second, please. Just give me a minute. I'm going to fix it right now. Thanks for watching, though. I'm trying to get in the ability for you guys to actually control.
And the idea that it's always been cheated and it needs to put tariffs. I think the world.
We got a little bit more work to do, though.
Oil markets are on edge. American consumers are already feeling it at the pump. Europe faces an energy crunch, and Asian importers are scrambling to secure supply. Could this reignite inflation around the world, and what would that mean for households? Counting the cost on Al Jazeera.
Europe under pressure as the conflict in the Middle East continues, now competing with Asia for scarcer oil and gas supplies. Rocketing prices benefit Russia and weaken sanctions over the Ukraine war, with Europe wary of antagonizing Donald Trump.
Okay,
so how's the Iran war impacting all of these?
Come on, motherfucker. That's pretty decent.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Imran Khan. Like everywhere else, Europe has been plunged into an energy price crisis in a matter of days. The US and Israel began attacking Iran less than a fortnight ago. Now, Europeans face stiff competition for oil and gas from Asia, with reports of ships being diverted to higher bidders.
Okay,
The Ukraine
let's
war.
go. Let's go. It's working. All right.
Or even dangerous.
My parents never talked about it. It's taboo.
Sex education in schools. Should it be taught? Who should it be for? And what should it look like? In Italy, those questions are sparking heated debate. But at this school, they're tackling the issue head on.
You're being intimate with your boyfriend, and he keeps pushing for sex. When you refuse, he says you don't love him enough. He's done everything for you, but you won't return his love.
What are they talking
Which
about?
card would you give him?
We're in Palermo, the capital of Sicily, an island off the southern tip of Italy. At this vocational school,
Y'all got
students
anything to
openly
add?
discuss
Please feel
sex,
free to
emotions,
drop a
and self-determination,
comment. Got any
topics
questions
that are
or
still
anything
taboo in
about
many classrooms
what
across the
you're
country.
seeing
He can't
or
force me to do
anything
something.
live
If I
theater?
say no or if I'm tired, you can't pressure me, just because you think I'm supposed to satisfy you somehow.
Physical or emotional violence, it's all violence and can never be justified.
Emilia Assini and Gea Di Bella run these workshops at the school's request. Even in Palermo, programs like this are the exception rather than the rule.
We try to address sexuality in a broad way, going beyond biology to include psychological, emotional, and social perspectives. A big part of our work focuses on what it means to grow up being socialized as a woman or a man, and the power dynamics between genders.
But programs like these are under attack. Sex education is not mandatory, and there are no plans to change that. A new law from the country's right-wing government would ban such programs entirely for children under 14. For older students, written parental
Still working on a few bugs.
Energy. It has always been so. We will continue to supply oil and gas to countries that are reliable counterparts. I mean, not only our partners in the Asia.
The situation has been further complicated by comments from US President Donald Trump.
More refresh on this shit, dude.
A waiver to continue buying Russian oil as part of its efforts to ease price volatility. As the conflict in the Middle East increasingly reshapes global energy markets, its ripple effects are being felt far beyond the battlefield. Amma Boateng, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Now, let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Berlin is Stephen Erlanger, the chief diplomatic correspondent for Europe at the New York Times. In Moscow is Chris Wiefer, CEO of Macro Advisory, a strategic consultancy focused on Russia and Eurasia. And in Riverdale Park in Maryland is Alan Tunnelson, who is an economist and founder of the Reality Check blog. A welcome to you all. Let me start in Maryland with Alan. Alan, this is a victory for Russia if Donald Trump eases sanctions. It's going to plunge Europe into crisis, and it was completely avoidable. I mean, do you have any sympathy with that argument?
I have no sympathy with that argument or whatever. And the main reason is that however discouraging things look right now, economically and also geopolitically, and especially for Europe, not for the United States, especially for Europe, we have to ask ourselves, how much worse would this situation be if Iran had acquired nuclear weapons? How much power would these mullahs, these Islamic fanatics, have had over the entire world economy if they acquired nuclear weapons? And I would submit to you, it is glaringly obvious that things would be much worse.
I mean, they
and
might
by the
be...
way, President Obama's 2015 Iran nuclear deal at best kicked the problem down the road a bit. And it was very flawed regarding inspections.
Well, let's bring that to Stephen. Stephen, this is a typical argument, right, from the Americans. You had to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. But that was what the negotiations were for, and they were ongoing. So do you have any sympathy with the position that Alan takes?
Well, I don't want to see a nuclear-armed Iran.
And I don't think anyone really wanted to see a nuclear-armed Iran. Now, the mullahs kept saying we would never have a nuclear weapon, but of course they were enriching uranium to 60%, which is very close to bomb grade. Now, I don't think they were going to have one very quickly, but had they chosen to have one, it could have happened. But
Who is
Still working on a few things, you guys. Let's get you back up in here so we can see the Israeli
it
combat.
will make the chance of Iranian bomb more likely rather than less likely. But I'm not a prophet, and we shall see.
I mean, that clearly sets out the American position. I want to bring Chris in here, but lifting of
These are slipping through the military rooms. Yeah.
I mean, it's a problem for you.
Well, it is to the extent that the European Union, as you said in the introduction, is already agreed and has adopted a plan to completely cut itself off from all Russian energy, oil and gas by the end of this year. It's supposed to start on April 25th with a ban on any new short-term LNG contracts, and then a ban on all contracts by the December 31st this year. So I guess the assumption that Europe made when it adopted this plan is that it would be easily able to get as much energy as it needed from the global market, from the Gulf and elsewhere. And now that clearly has got an enormous question mark over it. So Europe's energy strategy is in tatters. They are definitely facing a potential crisis if they get the next moves wrong. And remember, the backdrop here is that European gas reserves coming out of this winter are at an historic low. They used a lot of gas for heating this winter. They would normally need to start rebuilding those reserves for next winter, certainly by June at the latest. And now there's an enormous question mark over where are they going to get that gas and how much will they have to pay for it. So if you like, Europe's problems with regard to energy are only just beginning.
And Alan, that situation there is very, very stark, but it begs the question, did Donald Trump know what he was doing when he got into the Iran war? Did he know that this was going to have an impact on oil prices, gas prices, this severely?
Well, certainly Donald Trump knew what he was doing when in 2018, he asked the United States to protect you from Russia. And I found it fascinating to just find out this morning that 4 years after the Ukraine invasion, Europe still has not cut itself off from Russian energy supplies. For decades, we've heard about eurosclerosis in terms of the continent's poor economic performance. And now it's very, very clear that concerning matters like energy resilience, that term eurosclerosis applies even more strongly.
Stephen, do you think Donald Trump knew what he was doing?
That's a very good question. I can't read into his head. He was warned by General Kane, the chief of the armed forces, that this could be a very difficult and long war that would test America's supply of interceptors. It's one the jump in energy prices would be a short-term blip, as it had been in the last June bombing, which lasted 12 days, and it would soon go back to normal. I don't think they thought through, I don't know why, the Strait of Hormuz shutting down, essentially, because for the last 50 years, people have been worried about the Strait of Hormuz. This is hardly a new topic in security anxieties. So I do think he expected a quicker victory. I think he expected the decapitation of the regime to result in a different government fairly quickly that would talk to him. So far, that's not proved to be true. The war continues. We don't know for how long, but I think the markets are beginning to have an impression on the White House, which could, after all, declare victory at any time and leave. But to lose a war against Iran, I think, would be a very difficult thing for Americans to understand.
Chris, without Russia firing a shot, it seems to be the only winner in this particular conflict. I mean, is that something that you think is true?
November, because not only was it finding it difficult to find customers for oil, I mean, there's certainly reports of oil literally floating around in tankers looking for a buyer, but they've had to sell a lot of that oil at significant discounts. So while Brent was trading at about $65, there were reports that Russia was selling its oil for about $45. Now, as of early last week, we know that almost all of that surplus oil has been snapped up by Asian buyers and at close to market price. So our calculation, our back of the envelope calculation, is that Russian export value the Reserve Bank late last year issued a report or a warning saying that a lot of the, particularly independent oil producers in states like Texas, Oklahoma, etc., which, as I understand it, are strongly Republican states, that they were close to financial strain, saying that they needed at least $60 West Texas just to survive. So they will gain a lot from this higher oil price. And this is, to say, strong backing for the Republicans and for Donald Trump, but also gas producing states. Australia is a big LNG producer, as is Canada is a big oil producer. So Russia is not the only country that is gaining budget management a heck of a lot easier at Russian oil, and the fact that they don't have to sell.
Not the only winner here. In fact, as Chris was saying, some Republican states are going to get a financial bonanza here. But Russia's the only one that's at war with Ukraine. West Texas isn't. And that's a dangerous precedent. If you give Russia that money, which effectively you have, you're extending the war in Ukraine.
Oh, there's no question about that. At the same time, we really have to keep in mind that the oil industry, in fact, the entire fossil fuel industry, is a classic boom and bust industry. And the big successful companies, the big successful Western companies in particular, that dominate production in the US and the rest of the Western world, are very good at navigating these ups and downs. And as we, I think, just heard, as global oil prices rise, U.S. producers have much more incentive to put more supply on stream, and that's clearly what's going to happen. And we're going to see these oil price fluctuations continue, certainly for the next few months, as the Persian Gulf situation remains very uncertain. But it's also very clear that at least from the
One minute. Uh-oh.
Of them in the world is taking them away from Ukraine, which needs them to protect itself from Russian missiles are diverting, sometimes for their own use in Iran. So
missile interceptors out of South Korea and diverting them to the war effort in Iran. I want to come to Chris here. Chris, there is a strategic advantage here for Russia. There's a political advantage here for Russia, but there's also a military advantage here for Russia when it comes to Ukraine. May Russia use this to push further into Ukrainian territory and, put Europe on a knife edge?
Well, I don't think so. The conflict's been going on for 4 years now. Russia does appear to be making some gains, but it's literally inch by inch. Of course, we talk and we know the situation with regards to possible supply tightness on interceptor missiles, etc. But the Ukraine military is very effective. It's well dug in. The fact exports dynamic on the ground. It's not going to help the Russian military accelerate its gains in East Ukraine, for example. In fact, I would say that the fact that Russia is making this extra money really doesn't make much of a difference. It certainly makes the finance minister sleep better at night until he has less money to borrow to balance the budget. But it doesn't really change anything. Russia was not heading towards any sort of
Wilamowice was once a large traded throughout Europe. Over time, they developed their own distinct language, culture, and traditional dress. But World War II nearly brought all of it to an end.
After the war, the Vymasorish language and traditional clothing were banned. Even people who spoke Vymasorish at home were persecuted. That left deep emotional scars.
Piotrek is fascinated by this history and often visits 76-year-old Danusha. As a child, she was forbidden to speak Vymisuri. Today, she sews the minorities' once-banned traditional costumes. Technically, Danusha and Piotrek are still breaking the law.
The ban in Vymisorish was never officially lifted.
The theater group dreams that Vymisuri will one day not only be allowed, but even taught in schools. But for that, Poland's president would have to withdraw his veto. That seems unlikely. Conservative President Karol Nawrocki frequently blocks policies proposed by the liberal government. Both the president and his party, PiS, declined an interview request. Still, Król won't give up hope.
Och du oude wieve spreuch, verkusa de hinda nu, de bis mei wat wie geud, vermisai andruin, ok deich wel ver intien botsus entverwerkt.
In Wilemowice, people aren't easily discouraged, not even by a stubborn president. The final word goes to Piotrek. A successful first dress rehearsal, and proof that for Vymisuri, the show will go on.
For those of you out there who celebrated Christmas last year, what did you do with your Christmas tree once the holidays were over? Well, you probably didn't take it to a beach, did you? In England, that's exactly what a few thousand people have done on a stretch of coastline. And if you're guessing it's to somehow replant those trees, well, not quite.
It's not shedding at all. This is fantastic. I thought it was going to make a mess in the car, but it's not. It's great.
Alan White is pleased with his old Christmas tree, now ready for a second life.
And we're off to the beach.
Residents around Blackpool have donated around 2,000 Christmas trees. Now hundreds of volunteers are hauling them onto the beach, the same stretch of coast where millions of people flock in the summer. But the sand dunes are disappearing.
Over the past 100 years, we've lost 90% of the dunes. We need to create new layers of dune to protect people's homes and to protect wildlife.
At low tide, the trees are placed in long trenches across the sand. Climate change is bringing stronger storms and rising sea levels. Wind and waves have already eroded much of the dunes. But conservationists are fighting back. The trees trap sand and form the foundation for new dunes.
The sand easily catches on these fronds here and catches every time the tide comes in or the wind blows, and it creates new sand dunes.
The results are so successful that the project is being copied worldwide. But there is one condition.
Well, as long as they don't have lights on and as long as you don't still have baubles on, which we have had in the past, we just make sure to check that there's nothing artificial on the trees, and then yeah, they go in.
In typical British fashion, the project has become a community event.
No, like we say, we've retired, we've got time on our hands, and it's quite rewarding to help protect the coastline. I think it's really good.
The people around here appreciate the fact that we've actually created these things, so the properties don't get covered in sand. But also, there are some fantastic dunes behind here where there's a lot of wildlife.
A second life for the trees, and a unique way to save the shoreline.
That's it for this episode of Focus on Europe. If you missed anything or would like to share some of the things you've seen online, you'll find most of our stories on the DW News YouTube channel. On behalf of the team here, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, bye.
because it's energy self-sufficient. It produces enough oil for its domestic needs, and it's a big exporter of LNG.
Chris, I'm going
So
to stop you there because we're running out of time, and I want to come to Alan just for a very quick answer because we are running out of time. Alan, what's the appetite here for the Americans? Will they stomach a $200 a barrel oil price if that happens? What's the appetite here for the war?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. And certainly we've seen in the recent past that the appetite that the American people have, mainly for more military casualties, is really quite limited. And I would imagine that folks are going to be very, very unhappy if oil prices stay this high for much longer, much less if they rise further.
I want to thank all of you, Stephen Erlinger, Chris Weaver and Alan Tonelson. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the whole team here, bye for now.
As the war on Iran widens, its impact is spreading beyond the battlefield. Shockwaves are hitting global energy markets as facilities are damaged, supply routes disrupted, and risks to vital shipping lanes grow. Stay with Al Jazeera for continued coverage and expert analysis.
This is Al Jazeera with our continuing coverage of the ongoing conflict between the US, Israel and Iran. I'm Neve Parker with the latest developments. Iraq stops oil operation after an attack on 2 foreign oil tankers in its southern port. Brent crude oil prices soar past $100 a barrel as Iran targets energy facilities in the Middle East. Hezbollah and Iran carry out a wave of coordinated attacks across Israel. And Israel keeps up its strikes on Lebanon. At least 8 people are killed in an attack on a popular beachfront neighborhood. Good to have you. Iraq has suspended operations at its oil ports after 2 foreign fuel tankers were attacked in the southern port of Al-Far. It comes as the escalating conflict in the Middle East enters its 13th day. Officials say Iran was behind the strike. At least 1 crew member was killed while another 25 were rescued. Well, there's been more strikes on Iran with explosions seen in the central city of Isfahan. Iran says Israel and the United States have hit nearly 10,000 civilian sites since the war began, killing more than 1,300 civilians. And earlier, Israel was the target of a coordinated attack by Hezbollah and Iran. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps confirmed It was the first joint attack since the start of the war on Iran. Across Israel, strikes and interceptions were reported in several locations. And in Lebanon, at least 8 people have been killed in an Israeli attack on a popular beachfront district in Beirut. More than 30 people were injured in the strike on Ramlat al-Baida. The Lebanese capital has been under another night of heavy Israeli bombardment. 600 people have been killed and more than 750,000 displaced since hostilities resumed between Hezbollah and Israel 11 days ago. Well, we have correspondents covering the developments in Tehran, Doha, Washington, D.C. and Beirut. We begin in the Iranian capital where Tawhid Asadi is live for us. Tawhid, good morning to you. We are entering day 13, aren't we, of epic fury? I mean, just how much of Iran's core infrastructure is left standing after this latest wave of US and Israeli strikes?
Well, actually, we have been witnessing the continuous wave of the American and Israeli strikes, and on the latest from last night, I can say that in the capital, we have been able to hear the sounds related to the activation of the air defense system of the country. Specifically here in the capital and in other cities, we have also similar reports, and of course, the sounds related to the activity of drones were clearly heard across the capital in different places. And of course, we know that the airstrikes continue in different cities. An industrial complex in southern parts of Tehran, as well as in Isfahan, Kashan, Ahvaz, Saqqez. We have receiving reports about the continuation of the airstrikes. Infrastructurally speaking, we know that previously the energy minister came out to say that water and actually electricity infrastructures in some parts of the country have been targeted, but the most dangerous and disastrous situation comes after the Saturday night attack targeting oil facilities across the Iranian capital, specifically in southern parts of the capital, and as well as the western parts in Shahran and eastern parts, as a result of which still we can see this heavy, thick smoke drifting through the air, and there is this black cloud, dark cloud surrounding the entire city. That people are breathing, but also there are risks of contamination related to the water supplies as well as the soil in the capital and nearby cities. Seeing this already burning scene, that we at least the thick columns of smoke are visible when you look at those areas targeted, those oil depots targeted, and that is creating another layer of complexity for very ordinary citizens who have decided to stay in the capital. We know that we are talking about the province Tehran, which is home to over 14 million people. Some of that decided to leave the city. Some still are living under this tough situation, not just drones, not just missiles that are putting impact on residential areas, homes, schools, hospitals, but the air. Hear different worrying reports, not just from inside the country, but also when it comes to international organizations.
Okay, Tawhid, we'll be back with you a little later in the program. Let's go. It sparked a fire and residents were forced to evacuate the building, which is in the Creek Harbour district. The government says no one was injured. It was one of several attacks on the UAE within the last 24 hours, including a drone strike near Dubai's international airport. Zain Basravi is live for us in Doha. Zain, we have a taste of some of the activity in the Gulf region overnight by way of strikes. What else can you tell us?
Well, it's a much longer list. We know that there have been drone strikes throughout the course of this morning in the UAE. UAE air defenses dealing with missile and drone attacks since 3 a.m., really, and again at 6 a.m. today. Just a little while ago, smoke plumes were reported rising from the vicinity of Bahrain's international airport. That was after sirens were activated and people were told to remain calm and in place just a few hours ago. Bahrain's Ministry of Interior reporting this morning that 4 Bahrainis were arrested on charges of spying for Iran. So that's certainly a very concerning development on the ground there. Saudi Minister of Defense saying 2 drones were intercepted and destroyed in the empty quarter. 3 different attempts made this morning to attack Saudi Arabia's Sheba oil field. And in Kuwait, the drone targeted a residential building. Really, the list goes on. But what's very concerning is what's happened in Oman.
Scams, propaganda, and harassment today and age. Pretty spooky, right? Now, I tried to make this video 4 years ago, but I failed because it was too difficult to even demonstrate the technology. But today, anyone can be deepfaked, even the internet detective. Hi, everybody. This is CoffeeZilla, and I don't usually do videos like this, but the crypto market is going through a major crash. Now, let me stop me right there. I can't believe I used to trust that guy. But truthfully, nobody is really safe from this tech. Mr. Beast, Grass Tyson, Johnson, they've all been deepfake. And it's not just for scams, viral videos, news reports. The White House has even shared deepfakes. And today I want to investigate all of it so we can finally learn what's real and what's fake.
Tear down the violence. If you look at Afghanistan, the United States was at war in Afghanistan for 20 years, and they turned to Qatari government, the foreign minister, prime minister, the spokespeople have all said it may have started with missile salvos, but it will end at the negotiating table.
Mr. Ravi in Doha, many thanks for that update. Let's go back now to Tehran and speak to Towheed Asadi. Towheed, the message from the Gulf states is that they do feel that diplomacy should be the first course of action to avert this crisis deepening any further. We have heard from President Masoud Pezeshkian, who took to X, formerly Twitter, to list his apparently non-negotiable terms for peace. Is this, Towheed, a genuine diplomatic opening, do you think?
Well, actually, we have to keep in mind, first and foremost, that we are dealing with an extremely delicate situation. And this is something that the Iranians are considering. Diplomacy, according to the rhetoric that we have been hearing from Iran, has been always number one priority for the country over the past weeks and months, and I would say years. But right now, they are saying that first, as long as the strikes by the Americans and Israelis continue, either bases in the region, according to the foreign ministry spokesperson, it's not relevant to talk about anything rather than the crushing response. So diplomatic engagement while the war goes on is not the option on the table at this point, as we heard from different Iranian officials, including Ali Larijani, the Supreme National Security Council Secretary, the foreign minister himself, and others, all saying that a ceasefire or negotiation under this continued wave of air strikes by the Americans and Israelis is not going to be the option on the table for the Iranian side. In the meantime, we hear from Iranian officials from time to time putting emphasis, and from Iranian president previously, who came out to say that this is not a war that we have with our broader Muslim countries in the region, and this is the war that we have with the Americans. Or they said that in case of a U.S. attack on Iran, the U.S. bases in the region are going to be our quote-unquote Iranian Speaker of the Parliament, following the major military buildup by the Americans in the region. So Iranians are saying that just ahead of these initiation of the strikes, they warned the regional countries about the possibility of a regional confrontation. And the reality on the ground right now is that they are talking about even a further layer of regional confrontation. And on that, we've got one security force telling Al Jazeera very recently last night that the regional war will soon enter a new phase. And they are also talking about the escalations and the closures, not a sort of strategically important choke point, but also this security official told us that another key strait will face the same fate as the Strait of Hormuz. All in all, we are seeing nothing but the stakes being very high, and there is risk of expansion of this regional confrontation unless there is a possibility for the Americans and Israelis to consider halting their strikes, and then there would be a possibility from Tehran perspective, from Iranian vantage point, maybe to sit and talk and maybe not.
Ominous warnings by the sounds of it, Towheed, of more disruption to international shipping to potentially come. Towheed Asadi there in Tehran, thank you. US President Donald Trump has urged oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz as Iran tightens its chokehold on that crucial maritime route. Trump promised safe passage for the vessels, but didn't provide details. A fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas trade passes through the strait. The US president also said the operation against Iran isn't over yet. Iran says it's ready for a long war of attrition that would, quote, destroy the world economy.
We took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. We're up to boat number 60. I didn't realize they had that big a Navy. I would say it was big and ineffective. But every one of their ships, just about all of their Navy is gone. It's bottom of the sea. I hope you're impressed.
Have they laid any mines in the Strait of Hormuz?
We don't think so.
Rosalind Jordan is live for us in Washington, D.C. Good to see you, Rosalind. So the White House saying that Iran is evaporating, but the strikes appear to only be intensifying. Is Trump's goal still total surrender?
Well, it really depends on the hour and the day that you hear what the White House goal is for Iran. There's been everything from trying to promote regime change to not promoting regime change to destroying the Iranian military to preventing Iran from expanding its nuclear weapons program to stopping it from sponsoring groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. It changes from the day, it changes by the hour. So it's not really certain what the White House ambition is for continuing the war on Iran. That said, it's also worth pointing out that the president, Donald Trump, took opportunity on Wednesday to say that the U.S. War essentially has been won, but that he reserves the right to continue prosecuting it, which is the case as we go into the 13th day of the conflict.
And Rod, Trump also promised America first energy, but we know, of course, fuel prices are hitting record highs. I mean, how is the White House spinning the domestic economic pain of a war they insist is virtually won?
Well, what the president and some members of his cabinet have been doing is trying